My main problem in life is Stellaris. My second problem in life is that Stellaris has been out since 2016, has had 23 DLCs, and not a single one of them has been organic spaceships. Rocks. There is a rock DLC. My third problem is that I love the idea of spaceborne aliens, but I'm not good at science fiction. I'm not a big science fiction guy. Isaac Asimov once said, "To excel at science fiction is to be able to look over society's shoulder with a periscope and scout the hypothetical sandpits laying ahead. Good science makes good science fiction." So in honor of Asimov, who does in fact sound exactly like Bernie Sanders, I'm going to try and use all 95 of my unused IQ points on this video. A spaceborne alien is a spaceborne alien. Any sort of extraterrestrial flora or fauna that is capable of living in, or at the very least traversing, the vacuum of space. This can mean an organism that lives exclusively in space, but can also mean something that just uses space as a medium or vehicle for reproduction. So think plants and animals, but also any pollen or spores. There's something romantic about the idea that space isn't actually just an inhospitable void filled with radiation and frozen dogs, but instead another kind of ecosystem that life has pioneered that we simply don't understand yet. Nature abhors a vacuum, and I'd like to think that that saying scales up endlessly. So let me talk about it. At any given moment, the sun, our sun, regularly produces vast quantities of cosmic dust that blows out in every direction, carried by solar winds of charged particles. Cosmic dust is a fine particulate made out of silicates, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen, and other trace elements and organic compounds, like amino acids and glycates, and other such material I'm not smart enough to really specify further on. Sometimes this dust is conveniently packed together with ice. The significance of this is that the solar system is actually constantly being crop dusted with prebiotic material that can be used as chemical component to provide for life, along with the heat and radiation the sun already churns out, just as a matter of fact. So right there you have food, water, and energy all squared away. The real, actual problem becomes taking advantage of these resources in an ergonomic fashion. You'll never make it in this economy, kid, if your overhead costs eat up everything. Everything in space is super fucking far away from each other. I can't stress enough how empty and big space is. That's why they call it space after all. However, we don't actually need to get too involved in hypothetical methods of travel to circumvent the space issue of spacey space. Because if you're already in space, the hard part is over. It's now less about movement and infinitely more about controlling momentum. There's no friction, it's a vacuum. Like, I'd anticipate a common garden variety spaceborne organism to control its movement through a combination of expelling short bursts of gas and an organic chemical combustion system, all guided by some kind of internal magnetic organ. Like just push in a direction and let the polarity you establish with celestial bodies do the rest as you careen and slingshot yourself to infinity and beyond. Which is why one of the best strategies to possibly keep our hypothetical spaceborne alien alive would be to simply be where the resources are and have them come to you. Be a true gamer, don't move. The most extreme hypothetical I can think of is to simply be an organic satellite sucking from the tit of the sun. Take all the guesswork out of the process. Layer yourself in the finest heat-resistant silicates and carbon, and live your life slurping up hot plasma and ions as they directly churn out of the sun. Your stomach and innards, a highly sophisticated organ housing billions of radiotrophic microbes that metabolize the solar discharge into delicious chemicals. The less intense example would to just be a sticky, free-floating individual, taking advantage of the various gravitational currents that exist between orbits by letting them flow tidbits into your open mouth. You don't have to exert any energy in space if gravity is doing that for you, so don't. Be the antlion at the bottom of the pit. Spread your weird, sticky hydrocarbon filters and start siphoning up those goodies. Basically space coral. What I'm describing to you is space coral. Cover yourself in a tough inorganic ceramic silicone shell, which diatoms already do, by the way. I think coral uses calcium carbonate. Pack yourself to the brim with a layer of microbes underneath, and if you get lonely, asexually reproduce by budding and breaking off hunks of yourself. No problem, easy peasy. But we can make cooler coral. let's escalate things. It is time to be creative. In the ocean, there's a species of sponge called the Venus flower basket. This sponge is a type of glass sponge that shapes its body into a sophisticated silica lattice of cross-hatched tubes of coral that look like a three-dimensional doily. This sponge's special power is it lets shrimp live inside its body to provide cleaning and maintenance services. I'm gonna scale this creature up. Behold, the Venusphere sponge. With the fully grown adult measuring 5 kilometers wide and over 30 kilometers long, the Venusphere sponge is an organic O'Neill space cylinder. The outside of the creature is space coral, ceramic silicone shell covered in a multitude of sophisticated pores, siphons, and ostia. But the inside of the creature lives an entire novel ecosystem that converts the dust and sunlight it collects into complex organic nourishment. But where did it get those organisms from? It abducts them, of course. The Venusphere sponge descends onto worlds and with its powerful pressurized siphons, sucks up samples of plants and animals to build its involuntary ark. Alternatively, space jellyfish. Let's reel it back in. Let's de-stress. Do you like jellyfish? Let's talk about jellyfish. In every aspect of jellyfish, but in space. As a space jellyfish, you'd begin life as a mist of billions of dehydrated spawn shuffled onto a moon rich in energy and chemicals. Making landfall, you'd quickly metamorph into a shiny, rubbery polyp, sending out weird extensions of your body into the lunar soil and frond-like growths into the black lunar sky. From there you'd grow, accumulate resources, and eventually fabricate more jellyfish bodies and the chemical process necessary to propel them off your satellite. From there, you just chill out as an empty-headed, rubbery, glowing umbrella, absorbing light and radiation with your big, stupid head, and netting dust with your terrible tentacles, until you're ready to spore all over another moon. Actually, fun trivia time. The Pokemon hyper beast Celesteela lives a similar lifestyle to this. Celesteela reproduces by finding and landing on planets with a high geothermal activity, rooting themselves and sending down metallic shoots deep into the chemical-rich soup. They slurp up that boiling broth, engaging in chemosynthesis, and propagate more Celesteela to launch into space. With that said, maybe space is simply too difficult for any one single organism to manage all the necessary growth, development, and complicated adaptations needed to live in space. Maybe we need to adopt some tenets of socialism after all. What if your spaceborne alien is more like a hydrozoa? The hydrozoa, for those who don't know, is several organisms in a trench coat trying to pass off as a jellyfish. The life cycle of the hydrozoa is completely demented, and I will now inaccurately summarize it. They start off as a tadpole-like larva. That larva then colonizes a surface area. It then dramatically unpackages itself, morphing into a collection of several individual creatures that all live as one colonial polyp that outwardly resembles coral. This colony organism is called a hydroid. The hydroid feeds, grows, and when it matures, collaboratively fruits several different organisms that then join together to form a jellyfish-like creature called a medusoid. That collection of creatures is the hydrozoa. Now keep in mind that while all that's going on, every individual within these colonies is the same sex. They don't get to be a sex haver until they've constructed their motile, not jellyfish form. And even then, I think I might be, slightly wrong. The life cycle of this organism is very confusing. Now, bringing it all back, the idea that a spaceborne life form could have a life cycle where it essentially shits out an entire complicated ecosystem, terraforming or even acting as an invasive xenobiosphere, whose sole purpose is to act as an organic assembly line fabricating and launching more organic spaceships, is extremely fucking neato. Okay, yeah, I'll tell them. The swollen section of my brain devoted to generating erotic content wants you all to know that since every organism belonging to a colony of hydrozoa is the same sex, that a space hydroid biosphere would be a planet of gay sex. Thank you. Very cool. If I remember correctly, this may have also been the plot of one of the short stories in the manga anthology 2001 Nights by Hoshino Yukinobu, but not the gay sex part. But one of the stories is about a species of world tree that completes its life cycle by blowing itself the fuck up, and flinging its seeds into orbit to colonize other worlds. Lavos from Chrono Trigger also kinda does this too. Not the gay sex part. It's 10 minutes in, and I've seemingly exhausted the limits of my intelligence. There is only gay sex left. So let me end the video on something artsy. If anything I said sounded interesting, I'm gonna personally recommend you give the 1988 mecha anime Gunbuster a watch. Produced by Studio Gainax, when they were still good, and directed by Hideaki Anno, before he evangelionized himself, that series easily has one of the single best visual designs and aesthetics for spaceborne aliens I have ever seen. The space monsters of Gunbuster easily read as spaceships and are a great alien-looking alien, but at the same time you can clearly see the inspiration drawn from marine invertebrates, and maybe microbes, that inspire their overall design theory. You've got the same vivid color range seen in coral, the tubes and siphons on the creature like the kind you find on mollusks or sea sponges, and the overall weirdly hostile body shape that makes it look like a scaled-up microbe or zooplankton. Great design, 12 out of 10. Alright, that's it for me. That's all you get out of me. I gotta flesh out that space hydroid and that Venus sphere sponge idea. I literally came up with the concept as I was writing this video, and I think they deserve their own separate videos. Really interesting idea. Great concept. Until next time, YouTube, away!